You stare at the cold fireplace in your living room, ashes from last winter still scattered on the grate. You used to love building fires, the ritual of choosing wood, striking the match, watching flames catch and grow. Now you can't remember the last time you felt that kind of heat, inside or out. The room is warm enough without it. That's what you tell yourself. That's what everyone tells you. When did the fire inside you become just memory? When did you stop being a man who burned from within and become someone who just maintains temperature? The question hangs in the air like smoke without flame. Some losses we don't notice until we're sitting in the cold. Thomas sits in his kitchen, coffee growing cold in his hands. 68 years old, retired teacher, still sharp as the day he commanded a classroom. But something essential has gone dormant. It's not depression, he tells me, his voice flat as winter sky. I know what depression feels like. Had it after my father died. This is different. This is absence. Like someone turned down a thermostat inside me that I didn't know existed. I watch him stare through the window at his neighbor's garden. The tomatoes are heavy with late summer fruit, but Thomas sees them without hunger, without want. I used to wake up with heat, he continues. Not just physical energy, though, that too, but fire. Like my blood was lit from within. Like I could take on the world, build something, love someone so hard they'd feel it in their bones. Thomas remembers the man he used to be, the one who would wake up already planning projects, already thinking about how to make his wife laugh, already feeling that familiar stirring when she walked past him in her robe. The man who attacked Monday mornings like they were challenges to conquer. Now I wake up neutral, he says. Not sad, not angry, just room temperature, like I'm running on pilot light instead of full flame. This is the conversation men have with themselves in mirrors, in cars, in quiet moments when no one's watching. The slow realization that the fire, the essential masculine heat that once defined them, has banked to barely glowing embers. My wife says I'm quieter, Thomas admits. Not silent, just dimmer. She'll be talking about her day and I'm listening, but I'm not there. Not really. I'm somewhere else, wondering when I stopped feeling like I mattered, like I had something to offer beyond just presence. The fire Thomas mourns isn't just about sex, though that's part of it. It's about the heat that made him feel dangerous in good ways, powerful, alive. The fire that made him walk into rooms like he belonged there, that made him speak up in conversations, that made him reach for his wife's hand without thinking. I look at young men now, he says, and I remember that feeling, that sense that you're carrying lightning in your chest, that you could change the world, or at least your corner of it. When did I stop feeling electric? Thomas had accepted what everyone told him was inevitable, that fire was a young man's game, that at 68, he was supposed to settle into comfortable warmth instead of burning heat. That passion was meant to cool into contentment. But late at night, he confesses, when I'm lying there listening to my wife breathe, I think about the man I used to be. The one who could make her gasp with desire, who could work all day and still have energy to make love to her like the world was ending. And I wonder, is he gone forever? Or is he just sleeping? The fire hadn't died, I realized. It had just been neglected so long that Thomas had forgotten it was there. Forgotten that fire needs feeding, tending, intention. Sometimes a man needs to remember that pilot lights aren't meant to stay pilot lights forever. It began with his grandfather's cast iron skillet. Thomas found it while cleaning out the basement, wrapped in an old towel, forgotten for years. His grandfather had cooked on that skillet every morning for 60 years. Eggs, bacon, potatoes, standing at the stove like he was conducting an orchestra. I held that skillet, Thomas told me later, and something stirred. Not thoughts, deeper, like touching a live wire that had been sleeping. The next morning, Thomas did something he hadn't done in months. He got up before his alarm. Not because he had to, but because something in him wanted to stand at the stove like his grandfather had, wanted to feel the weight of cast iron in his hands. He seasoned the skillet with oil and salt, heated it until it smoked, cracked 2 eggs into the hot metal and watched them sizzle and pop. The sound woke something primal in him, the satisfaction of creating something with fire and intention. "I ate those eggs standing at the counter," he said, "and they tasted like possibility, like I'd fed myself something more than food." The ritual grew. Thomas started waking at dawn, drawn to the kitchen like iron filings to a magnet. The cast iron became his altar, the stovetop his sacred fire. He'd cook simple things, eggs, peppers, onions, but with the focused attention of a man performing ceremony. It wasn't about the food, Thomas explained. It was about the fire, the real fire, the flame under the pan, the heat in the metal, the sizzle that said something was happening. Something was being transformed. His wife noticed the change before he did. "You're different in the mornings," she said, watching him move around the kitchen with purpose instead of routine. "More present, like you've woken up instead of just opened your eyes." Thomas had rediscovered something essential. Fire responds to attention. The more he tended his morning ritual, selecting ingredients with care, heating the skillet with intention, cooking with presence, the more alive he felt. "I started noticing other fires," he said. "The pilot light on the water heater, the flame under my coffee pot, the way sunlight catches and burns in windows. Fire everywhere once you start looking." 3 weeks into his cast iron mornings, Thomas made a discovery that changed everything. While cooking eggs one morning, he caught his reflection in the kitchen window. For the first time in months, his eyes looked alive, not just awake. Burning. "That's when I understood," he said. "The fire hadn't gone out. I'd just stopped feeding it, stopped tending it, let it bank down to coals because I thought that's what getting older meant." But fires don't die, they wait. They hold heat in their embers, ready to flare back to life when someone who knows how to tend them pays attention. Thomas started paying attention to the flame under his skillet, to the heat building in his chest as he cooked, to the way his wife looked at him when he served her eggs cooked with intention instead of habit. "The first time I reached for her after cooking," Thomas said quietly, "it wasn't duty or routine, it was hunger, real hunger, the kind that comes from a fire that remembers how to burn." The cast iron had become more than cookware. It had become the tool that taught Thomas how to tend his own flame. 6 weeks into his cast iron mornings, Thomas experienced something he hadn't felt since his 30s. He walked into a room and people noticed. Not because he was trying to command attention, but because he was carrying something powerful. The quiet confidence of a man whose fire was burning clean and strong. "My wife said something that stopped me cold," Thomas told me. "You're dangerous again," she said, "not threatening, dangerous like a controlled burn, like I had power I knew how to use." The transformation wasn't just internal. Thomas's posture straightened. His handshake got firmer, his voice carried further. He started making decisions instead of deferring them, started leading conversations instead of just participating. "The fire had changed everything," he said. "When you start the day tending flame, you spend the rest of the day acting like someone who knows how to work with fire." Thomas began expanding his relationship with heat. He started grilling again, not just cooking outdoors, but really grilling. Building fires, managing coals, understanding how different woods gave different flavors. His backyard became a place of creation instead of just maintenance. "I invited our neighbors over," Thomas said. "Cooked for 12 people on the grill. Stood there managing 3 different fires, timing everything perfectly. My wife watched me and said later, 'I forgot what you look like when you're in your element.'" His element. Thomas had rediscovered his element, not just fire, but the mastery of fire. the ancient masculine art of controlling and directing power for creation instead of destruction. The bedroom became a place of rediscovery. The fire Thomas had rekindled in his kitchen followed him everywhere. His touch carried heat again. His presence felt intentional. His desire wasn't nostalgic, it was present, powerful, alive. "We make love differently now," Thomas said, and his voice carried quiet pride. Not trying to recreate 30-year-old passion, but with the fire of a man who knows his own power, who isn't apologizing for wanting, who burns steady instead of frantic. His wife confirmed the change. "He doesn't just touch me now," she told me privately. "He tends to me, like I'm something precious that deserves careful fire." It's more intimate than anything we had when we were young. Thomas started mentoring younger men at work, not with words, but with presence. The kind of presence that comes from a man who's learned to tend his own fire and isn't afraid to burn bright. "They ask me what changed," Thomas said. "These younger guys who see something different in how I carry myself. I tell them, find your fire. Whatever it is, cooking, building, creating, loving, find the thing that makes you burn from within and tend it every day." The man in the mirror wasn't trying to be 30 again. He was being 68 like it was a choice he made every morning. Like this age could still mean carrying fire instead of just carrying on. "I learned something my grandfather knew," Thomas said. "Fire doesn't diminish with age, it matures, gets more controlled, more intentional, more powerful. The fire I carry now is different from what I had at 20. It's better, more useful, more me." Thomas had discovered that the fire doesn't go out, it evolves. From the wild flames of youth to the controlled burn of maturity, both have their place, both have their power. But only one can cook the perfect egg on a cast iron skillet at dawn, then carry that heat through an entire day. "The fire was always there," Thomas said. "I just had to remember I was the one holding the match." Your fire isn't gone, it's waiting. Banking in the coals of who you've always been, ready to flare back to life when you remember how to tend it. You don't need to recapture the wild flames of youth. You need to discover the controlled burn of maturity. The fire that doesn't rage, it creates. Doesn't consume, it warms. Doesn't flash, it sustains. Find your cast iron, your morning ritual, your daily practice of tending flame. It might be cooking, building, creating, loving, but find the thing that makes you burn from within and feed it every day. The fire you carry now is different from what you had at 20. It's better, more intentional, more you. Tomorrow morning, do something that requires fire, literal or metaphorical. Cook something that sizzles. Build something with your hands. Create something that didn't exist before. Feel the heat of making instead of just consuming. If you know a man whose fire has banked to coals, who's forgotten he still carries flame, share this with him. Some fires need to see other fires burning to remember they're still alive. We're all learning how to tend the fire that doesn't dim with age, it deepens. You're still here and you're not done.